everybody is ready for Christmas? Nah, come on. Is there anybody out there who is not ready for Christmas? What do you need to get ready for Christmas? Well, you all are going to talk to me a lot today, aren't you? Time, a few extra days, maybe an elf that would make it much easier to get everything done. What else would you need?
Quiet time.
Quiet time. It ain't going to happen. Steve, help me dig this up. I think this is a little bit more of what you need to get ready for Christmas. Not for going to the mall, or surviving the airport, or even dealing with in-laws and relatives when they come for dinner, but because of the reality of what Christmas is. A non-typical Christmas story. And a great portent appeared in the heavens, and a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and crying out in birth pangs, in the agony of giving birth. And then another portent appeared, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems on his head. The tail swept down a third of the stars in heaven and threw them to the earth. And then the dragon stood before the woman who was about to bear a child, so that he might devour her child as soon as he was born. And she gave birth to a son, a male child who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. But her child was snatched away and taken to God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared by God, so that she could be nourished for 1,260 days. A war broke out. A war broke out in the heavens. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But they were defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was throwing down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. And then I heard a loud voice in heaven proclaiming, "Now have come the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Messiah. For the accuser of our comrades has been thrown down. He accused them day and night before God. But they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, for they did not cling to life even in the face of death. Rejoice then, you heavens, and those who dwell in them. But woe to the earth and the sea. The devil has come to you with great wrath, because he knows that his time is short." So when the dragon saw that he had been thrown down to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. But the woman was given the 2 wings of the great eagle, so that she could fly from the serpent into the wilderness to her place where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time. And then from the mouth the serpent poured water like a river after the woman, to sweep her away with the flood. But the earth came to the help of the woman. It opened its mouth and swallowed the river that the dragon had poured forth. Then the dragon was angry with the woman and went off to make war on the rest of her children, those who keep the commandments of God and hold fast to the testimony of Jesus. Not a typical Christmas story, but yet it is. We sometimes forget that there is evil making war on the lives of people all around. 1 week. In 1 week this year, we had grandparents come in to bring their daughter, that brought their daughter for one of our Christmas Kids programs. She's autistic. She's 20 years old. She's autistic about the level of a 5th, 6-year-old. In the custody of her grandparents, because her parents were selling comes in, now raising her children on her own, because in the course of the last year or so, her husband had been beating on her to the point that the kids were hiding in a closet, and she decided it was time to leave when he started trying to beat the closet door in to get to the kids. We've had 600 families, almost 600 families through the food pantry in November alone, and 100 of those families have never been to us before. There's 1% of this nation controls 42% of the wealth, and according to U.S. News, USA Today, that 40%, nearly half, of all the Americans between 20 and 60 in this country have experienced at least 1 year living below the poverty level. Almost half. And in Marshall County, 27% of the children live below the poverty level. Heroin is flowing. And we're anticipating by the end of next year that we will see crocodile. It's a combination of opiates boiled with gasoline or lighter fluid on the streets in the area. If you go into the school system, you'll see it every day. You may have seen it in your neighbor. You may have seen part of it in your family. It's a war. And evil is truly fighting against all of God's people and against all of creation. And in the season of Advent, in the season of preparation for the coming of the Messiah, we've got a choice. For so many, it's time to stay in the house and pray for the coming that would end this world. For others, it's to pretend that these numbers aren't real. And still for others, it's time to look and see where God's hand is in the midst of this. Because these are just not numbers. These are people. These are people who are looking most often from the outside in to the church. And they're asking us a question, is this faith real? And does it make a difference? Is this faith genuine? And what does it mean to talk about the coming of God, Emmanuel, in this world? Let me read you a more typical Christmas story. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God, and all things came into being through him. And without him, not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was light, and light was the light of all people. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. He was in the world, and the world came into being through him, yet the world did not know him. He came to what was his own, and his own people did not accept him. But to all who received him, who believed in his name, he gave power to become children of God, who are born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, or of the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh and lived among us. And we have seen his glory, the glory as a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. Eugene Peterson described Christmas as God's great invasion, coming into the midst of a world of sorrow and doubt and of uncertainty. And in his paraphrase of the Bible, The Message, he translates that instead of ignoring it, God moved next door. God came to bring the gifts of love and the gifts of hope and the gifts of peace, the gifts of reconciliation, the gift of life into a hurting and needy world. God moved in next door. It's God's neighborhood now. But those who have controlled it in the past, the dragon and his minions, aren't going to give it up easy. They've claimed it and they want to keep it. And so the struggle will continue. But the good news is that God has moved in next door. The Word become flesh is our neighbor. And God will empower us through the presence of His Christ to love God with all our heart, our soul, our strength, our mind, and to love our neighbors as ourselves. In the midst of abuse and addiction and poverty and need, the good news, the news of Christmas is God has come to the neighborhood. And so the question I began, the opening question I asked, what do you need to get ready for Christmas? It's still important. What do you need to get ready